I'm Chris Mattingly, a poet, bookmaker, and teacher out of Louisville, Kentucky. I'm here to share with you a written response to a piece of work out of the Speed Museum's permanent collection. The piece is a painting called Appeal for Calm by Jean Dubuffet. Jean Dubuffet apparently was a French painter and sculptor who really embraced aesthetics of low art and eschewed standard ideas and conventions regarding beauty. Instead, from what I read, he chose to create images that had a more authentic and humanistic appeal to them. Appeal for Calm seems to do that. But the thing about Appeal for Calm that really grabbed me initially is the chaos of the image. And out of the chaos, there's this incredible tension, which I think is coming out of his materials and the colors, the tones that he's getting from the materials. The materials are gouache on paper, and the gouache, being a kind of watercolor, gives the images a sense that they are sort of bending and blending into one another. The images feel sort of like they're dripping and they're fluid and they're kind of streaked with a raininess. That's in direct contrast to these really muted tones that kind of give the piece for me it's like a brittleness, like the scratchy ashiness, and the combination of those two things together is really exciting to me and really interesting. It's just a kind of tension that you can feel, kind of just pulling you these different ways. So I've created a poem that aims to respond directly to that tension. Now I've done it in a totally different way. What I've tried to do is write a poem with lines that have a kind of music and rhythm to them that is propulsive to the point in which the reader or the listener feels shoved through the poem. In contrast to really strong images that are hopefully as vivid and clear as a photograph, and that have that kind of stillness of a photograph that helps the reader or listener, or forces the reader or listener to be still and steadied, therefore creating a tension in which the reader feels like they are held by an image while at the same time being pushed forward by the language. I've written a poem called Flew in the Fuselage, and I've housed it in this little book. As I mentioned before, I'm also a bookmaker. So I created this piece with China markers and charcoal in a little 4.5 by 5 book, which I've hand stitched, black binder's thread, and typed up with my little 1941 Remington Remet typewriter. The poem begins with an epigraph from a band, a Washington, D.C. band called Rites of Spring. And the epigraph reads, "Caught in time, so far away from where our hearts really wanted to be. Flew in the fuselage of ashy words hammered out on hunks of pre-war metal. Helicopters blacken the sky, but the fruit trees bloom. My head buzzed like a beehive in the graveyard. How can someone so careful be so recklessly, potently ignorant? Looking back at last night, drunk on mezcal, I bombed the dark street to the bottom of the hill for more. My bleeding, screaming skull aglow on the underbelly of my zero deck. I felt the street in my teeth, euphoric and giddy, hellishly grinning like a circle of burned rubber at the intersection of scared shitless and don't give a fuck. You know what it's like to wake to a crystal blue sky clear as super glue, Still tipsy, weaving back and forth like the thin smoke from last night's smoldering fire. Man, you should have been doing yoga. You should have been doing yoga and drinking pink tulsi tea, or singing along to Rites of Spring or Fugazi, stitching our current predicament into neat little books, instead of slam dancing solo in the street, middle-aged middle fingers aimed like bottle rockets at the invisible threat. What can I say? The call to live was honestly authentic at my most hopelessly withered, pent up and pinned down. In the moment before I fell, I was flying.